you mentioned early on as well that you grew up where it might have been a bit stigmatized to talk about mental health.
Yeah.
How has that changed now? What does your family think about this new company that you're running?
They're pretty stoked. Yeah, I think they've come around to it a lot. It's funny. My mom will send me like random articles about mushrooms. And I'm like, Mom, it's like 5 a.m. Like the first thing you do when you wake up is read about mushrooms. I love it. she's really stoked about it. And this is coming from, my parents immigrated from China many decades ago. So they definitely didn't have anything related to drugs growing up. So I think it's great. I think it's really exciting. And I think it's really interesting that even in the US that there's a convergence of the older generation that might have been around for the 60s and 70s, and then this younger generation that's so exciting, and things are coming together in a place where I think there's enough momentum to really change both stigma and access.
Where do you fall on a line of the legality or what you think it should be? It's one of these controversial things where there's decriminalization, there's complete legality, there's legality in therapeutic settings. What do you think is the right path forward there?
I personally am like a big fan of just completely legalizing it. I think just given the cultural and historic context of these things probably shouldn't even have been made illegal in the first place. It from my understanding, was very political, related to the Vietnam War and related to politicians at the time wanting to exert control over mainstream society. So I think there's, a lot of deep and troubling history there. And I think from other perspectives, like there are case studies of other countries that have at least decriminalized drugs, such as Portugal, and have seen a lot of their drug overdose rates, for example, or crime rates go down. So yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of benefits to legalizing these therapies, especially because they have relatively positive safety profiles. So I think, so many reasons from historical, political, economic that make sense for it to be legal. But yeah, at the same time, the way things are going now, it's going through the American medical system. So I think we have to dual track it and hope that we can get measures out there and get votes in the ballots to legalize them, but we can't bank on that happening. So we also need to make sure that we can shuttle them through the American healthcare system and the FDA.
In terms of the sort of entrepreneurial movement that has been getting a lot of steam within the space in the last couple of years, you have the drug companies, you have clinics, you have software companies like yourself, there's even music companies. What are you most excited about? Are there other companies in the space that you're watching pretty closely and eager to see?
Yeah, gosh. Oh man, I'm just excited. I'm really excited about everyone. I think it's so interesting because there's been such a convergence of a lot of these. And I think when you look at traditional healthcare, everything is very siloed. Like you've got biotech in one place, you've got software in one place, you've got clinics, and none of them really blend. But in psychedelics, it seems like there's so much mixing and so much innovation that it makes sense for a clinic to be doing research and to be developing its own drugs and potentially to be building its own software. And we're definitely staying in the software and research area, but it's cool to see other companies with that approach. I think where folks can really differentiate is like solving the infrastructure pain points that we're going to have. So we have a partnership that I guess we're officially announcing later on with a very early stage company called Journey. They're based in New York, but they're going to be in-person practice for ketamine practitioners who are just starting out. So the pain point that they identified from an infrastructure perspective was there's so many therapists and practitioners interested in administering psychedelic medicines, but most states in the US require a prescribing physician to be able to get those medicines. But like, how do they do that? Like, how are they going to find an MD who's just going to hand them ketamine for their patients? And so Journey aims to connect those two parties. They have an ability for new practices who are getting off the ground to rent space and to basically get access to a prescribing MD for their ketamine and to rent other types of resources, including the Osmind EHR, to really help them get off the ground. So I think it's companies like that are solving like the fundamental, maybe not as sexy, but like infrastructure, like we need to lay the groundwork type problems that are really interesting for us. And I think that's, what we're excited about doing too, is laying the data infrastructure to collect all this information and to help advance both practice and research.